Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker. It's the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate. It does it with Barb Schlinker. She's the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, the host of the program, in fact. And Barb, I would think a majority of people selling their home expect that the buyer will go ahead and purchase as is without any repairs. But the reality is, most buyers do an inspection. Sometimes it goes well, other times it can be pretty frustrating for the home sellers. Tell us about it. You've got a lot of experience in this area and you know what it takes to be an inspector.
Well, I tell you, Richard, I could be an inspector and I'm scary with a tool in my hand because there is no qualification in the state of Colorado to be an inspector. Anybody could be an inspector. If it makes you feel any better, they get an online certification. And they put together these reports and they come through and they judge your house and they'll say, well, you need this and you've got to update your smoke detectors and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're way off. I just had one the other day where they said, well, you need to change the light bulbs in the light fixture in the master bedroom. Well, they work. You just got to pull the string to turn it on. That's the kind of stuff that we get on a regular basis. Those are easy to solve, but you really need to work with somebody that knows what is normal and what is not normal on an inspection. The whole purpose of an inspection is for the buyer to do their due diligence to confirm that, okay, the home is in good enough condition that I want to buy it. In many cases, the home seller doesn't know that there might be some hidden defects of the home, and every home has defects, every single one. So the question is whether or not the seller should be responsible to fix it. I just got an inspection objection the other night on one of my listings. Now, this home is older than me, Richard. It's 70 years old, right?
Wow.
And
Than you by
it's,
like 30, 35 years, but the home is 70 years old.
yeah, and it's like, okay, so, you know, does the buyer, and really, really low price sale, does the buyer really expect a new house? Because that's kind of what they asked for. There were 28 things on the objection. We want new windows. We want new smoke detectors. The smoke detectors aren't high enough. We want, it just went on and on. Now, a few of the things were legitimate and realistic, and some were ridiculous. So,
Barb, let me hang on a second here. Is an itemized list of repairs that come from an inspector, is that just a wish list for things that you want on the home?
well, what happens is the buyer will hire an inspector. So most buyers don't know an inspector. So typically they're taking a recommendation from somebody the real estate agent might have worked with in the past. I have seen people's father do an inspection. I have seen landscapers do an inspection. I have seen people that weren't qualified that were there for 30 minutes and done, so you never know who you're going to get and you never know exactly how they're going to judge the home. But what most of them do is they'll set up an inspection and they'll start going through all the systems in the house and they will send all of the defects that they find to the buyer. So it's up to the buyer to ask for stuff. The buyer doesn't have to ask for stuff. In fact, many times in the contracts, what the buyers do to entice the seller to go under contract with them is they'll put this very, I should say, deceiving statement in the contract that says, we accept the house as is, except for health and safety and plumbing and electrical and structural. So what does that mean, right?
It's a
I
pretty
mean,
big umbrella.
it's a very big umbrella. And so we see that statement in contracts all the time, which it doesn't mean anything really. It's up to the buyer to make a formal written request that says, we'll take the house, but we want you to fix this and this and this. And basically, it's a call your bluff kind of statement. It's like, we won't take the house unless you fix these things. And then the seller's normal response is what we call an inspection resolution. Okay, we see your request. This is what we will do, but they may not do everything on the list. If the buyer accepts it, then the contract is moving forward. If the buyer does not accept it, the contract automatically terminates on that resolution deadline, and the buyer gets their earnest money back and the house goes back on the market. So some people use that resolution deadline um, as a strategy. Let's say they have a backup buyer in their back pocket that may be offered to pay more for the home. That's the best case scenario ever for a seller, because if the buyer asks for anything, they can just go work with the other buyer. All they have to do is ignore the objection. And one more thing, the buyer has to not withdraw their objection, because it's still in the buyer's court to stay in contract. They could go in and say, oh, all right, well, if you're going to pull out, Mr. Seller, I'll just cancel my request for all these repairs. That way I'm sure I'm going to get the house. So there's a lot of strategy that goes on kind of inside baseball, but that's why you need to hire a professional that knows what they're doing, that understands these dates and deadlines and what they mean. I have actually recently had a home seller tell me when they were under contract before, and she had legal background, that the agent didn't explain anything about this to her. And she wanted out of the contract. She had to go research it on her own. So it's unfortunate that, you know, in the real estate industry, it's only 1 month of school and they don't teach you how to serve your clients, how to tell them what to expect, how to explain the contract to them, and what the provisions in the contract actually mean. You know, I'll be really honest. When I started, I didn't know it's a 20-page contract, right? And some agents just email it to the client and go, oh, I got an offer. Here's the offer amount. Looks good to me. Sign it. They don't even explain any of it. And I make a point to, because I know people don't do this every day. They want to know exactly what they're getting into. And even though the laws are that they leave it up to the consumer to understand what they're getting into, I think it's a really good idea to educate the client as we're going through the process. Most buyers do at least one inspection. Every once in a while, they'll do more than one. Typically, they'll get an inspection report back from the inspector. They will provide that along with an objection. Okay, here's my report, and Mr. and Mrs. Seller, these are the things that I want you to fix. Okay, great. What happens though is if we send the report with the objection, the seller naturally gravitates to looking at the whole report and everything that's wrong with the house, and that usually upsets them. So I try to meter that so they're not so distressed and they're just focused on what the buyer is asking for. The buyer doesn't have to ask for anything. In fact, the contract says the home is sold as is, where is, with all its faults, right? So why aren't they doing that? I don't know, but they don't. Now, some broken things are legitimate that they didn't know about, and some things are not. But this is not the buyer's time to get upgrades or new stuff. It's just to fix whatever's in place. And I can tell you, I've had all kinds of crazy stuff happen during inspections. I've had the inspectors stick their foot through the ceiling when they were in the attic. I've had inspectors catch the house on fire. I've had inspectors pull toilets without permission and rip the vinyl, or not reseat the toilet properly and cause a leak. I have had buyers have a pizza party during the inspection and the seller's out of town. So I get this panicky call from the seller going, what in the heck is going on? Are they squatting in my house? Why is there pizza being delivered to my home? And I'm like, okay, I'll be right over there. And the thing was, they sent me the screenshot on their Ring doorbell. And you have to assume, if you're a buyer in somebody else's house, that you're going to be on camera. If you don't, you're just uninformed, because most people have cameras. So they sent me the screenshot. It wasn't just one pizza being delivered. It was 4 pizzas and a bag of wings. So no wonder they're asking if they're squatting in their home, right? Just crazy stuff happens. I have had inspectors red tag a furnace. What red tag means is they turn it off. This is in the middle of the winter, freezing cold outside. They turn the furnace off and shut it down and go, this is unsafe. It is emanating carbon monoxide. Well, It wasn't carbon monoxide. It was a brand new furnace. It was the inspector's gadget wasn't working right. I've had inspectors kick my home sellers out of their own homes, and the sellers didn't know any better. So they call us and ask us to go. And I'm like, this is your house. Okay, we'll be right over because we represent our clients, but that should never happen. It's their home. I've had agents not pay attention to what's going on during the inspection. They're out on the front porch, talking on the phone, yucking it up. And I had one inspector that actually ran every single faucet inside and outside the house for 4 hours, sucked the well dry, sucked sand up through the well pump into the sink and into the tub. And then the inspector tells the buyer that the well isn't working right, and the buyer terminates. I mean, crazy stuff can happen on inspection. So I tell my sellers, I highly recommend you are there, or if you can't be there, we're going to be there for you. This picture I'm showing you right now, this is an inspector. He was running, this is on that same report, right? He's running the faucet while he's running every other faucet in the house, including the dishwasher and the whole thing. And if you look at his gadget, his little pressure gauge reads 0, but there's a huge spray of water coming out of the hose. And so he's like, yeah, the well's shot. It's just, I mean, it's total insanity. You never know what you're going to expect. Okay. But these are the things that you can do. I have a whole list of things that we'll cover in just a minute, Richard, about what you can do to make sure you pass your inspection. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm with Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. I'm the host of Your Real Estate Voice, and we're talking about inspection nightmares and what you can do about it. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And we're talking about home inspection problems, and home sellers are facing some of these. Barb, what are some other tips our listeners should absolutely know about?
Well, make sure you hire an agent that includes a certified pre-owned home. We do a pre-inspection for our sellers so they know what's coming. So there's no surprises when they're in the middle of moving. And typically the things that most home sellers fear is just what they don't know, right? So if we do a pre-inspection, we've got you covered. You know exactly what to expect. And some of the basics are just roof, electrical, plumbing. Usually structure is not a problem. Some of it's cosmetics, but we can get you ready so you don't have to worry about any of those things. And that's part of what we do. And actually, if you go to my website, barbhasthebuyers.com, I've got a really good report up on free reports called the 11 things that you should know to pass your inspection. So go get that. It's totally free at barbhasthebuyers.com, or give us a call at 719-301-3900. Richard?
You're listening to Barb Schlinker at Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. This is Your Real Estate Voice. And if you're thinking of making a move, selling your home, you want to get the most amount of money out of it, then call Barb, 719-301-3900, or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking about how to sell a home in a changing market like the one we have now.